¿Qué tal, gente? My name is Rodrigo Garcia, and I am the artistic director of Teatro Visión. I should be there. And I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, I see why. Okay.
I was like, I couldn't hear you.
It's been a while, but ¿qué tal, gente? Mi nombre es Rodrigo Garcia. I am the artistic director of Teatro Visión and your host for tonight. Bienvenidos a La Hora del Mitote. We thank you for joining us tonight. La Hora del Mitote se transmite cada viernes a las 7 por nuestra página de Facebook, nuestro canal de YouTube y en el canal 30 de Comcast. Estamos con nuestros amigos de Create TV. We invite you to participate by sending us your questions and comments. I would like to start off by acknowledging that we are guests on the ancestral homeland of the Muwekma Ohlone people who continue to live and thrive in our community today. Me gustaría comenzar reconociendo que somos huéspedes aquí en la tierra ancestral del pueblo Muwekma Ohlone, que continúa viviendo y prosperando en nuestra comunidad local hoy. Es un placer para mí estar con ustedes hoy. Just like every Friday, we have a very special guest and guests. And tonight, it's no different. I'm delighted to introduce to you a great friend, an amazing artist, and an amazing woman, Cristal González Avila. She is a Chicana actress, playwright, teaching artist, and director directly from Watsonville, California. She holds a BA in Theater Arts from San Jose State University and is a Reed Award recipient for excellence in acting and oral interpretation. Her work includes La Sombra, The Shadow, a solo performance, and a full-length play, PIERNAS, The Story Between Our Legs. Given her work as an artist has given her the opportunity to work as far east as our nation's capital and as far south as Mexico's capital in front of dignitaries and migrants alike. And nothing means more to her than creating, healing, performing, and collaborating with her communities. Cristal, bienvenida a La Hora del Mitote.
Gracias, Rodrigo. Aquí estamos para mitotear.
Eso es. Es un placer y como siempre les invitamos a que nos saluden y nos manden sus mensajes y su amor y todo. Y empezamos con Teatro Visión. Hola, Cristal, te quiero mucho.
Oh, gracias, Teatro Visión.
Jambier, hola, Rodrigo y Cristal. Hola, hola. Diane, hola, Cristal, te quiero mucho.
Diane! I need to call you.
So we have a lot to talk about, Cristal, and I hope that we have enough time to get to everything that I want to ask you.
Sure.
But first, tell us about yourself. How do you define yourself as an artist?
Well, I'm a teatrista by heart. That's my first and foremost, my passion that I started 22 years ago. Ya hace 22 años que empecé con la actuación. And throughout my artistic journey, I've picked up other skills out of necessity and out of a desire to continue to grow my muscles. So I'm a teaching artist, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm a producer, I'm a mother. And most importantly, I love bringing las historias del campo. I'm like Rodrigo said, I'm from Watsonville, California, farm worker family. And I grew around muchos campesinos y esas son las historias que realmente me hicieron a mí y que aún escucho en mi corazón, en mi mente. And that's who I write for. I always keep my community in mind. I currently live in San Juan Bautista, so I'm serving the Quad County, San Benito County, Monterey County, the Silicon Valley, and Santa Cruz County. But but my heart and my corazón and my dedication to my work, the root of it all is mi familia and mi querido Watsonville, California. ¿No te escucho, Rodrigo?
Thank you. Sometimes I forget that I was saying that I've had the opportunity to see you in action and also the great honor to work with you. I've seen your work as an actress, as a playwright, as a teaching artist, as a director, and it just amazes me the great passion that you brings into everything that you do. And you sort of already mentioned a little bit of what you like to, you know, the stories that you like to bring. Tell us about that inspiration that draws and guides your work.
Again, I mean, growing up in the campo, I remember very vividly because I was there during summer break. I was there after school. I was there during the winter because my dad wanted to make sure the plants weren't dying or los árboles estaban creciendo o tenían suficiente agua. So, siempre escuchaba los campesinos cantar, um, contarse historias or anecdotes, chistes para pasar el tiempo. And I remember thinking they're working and they're bringing so much joy to their work. And their stories resonated so much with the ones that I was living at home, the ones that I was living with my familia. So that's a lot of what my work aims to bring and to capture. I feel like there's still a huge void to bring those stories to the stage or to the conversation. And this is why when I write, especially my first couple of pieces that I wrote as an individual artist was dedicated to them. You know, son las historias mías y las historias de esos campesinos y de mi madre y de mi tía. Y aún hay mucho más por traer y compartir en el teatro y más allá, pero esas conversaciones y esos temas aún no creo que tienen suficiente atención. Y es por eso que me encanta escribir sobre dónde vengo, a dónde vamos, de dónde venimos, y aún hay muchas historias por venir. Entonces, creo que todos tenemos propósito como artistas, pero el mío aún está muy definido en el campo. That's my inspiration for my work.
And what do you hope to accomplish with that?
Visibility. I think for a big part of my life, I felt invisible because somos campesinos, because of the shame of poverty, because of where you live, where you go grocery shopping, what your parents look like, or what they are or what they aren't. And I remember very specifically, and this was a turning point for me later on in my life, pero cuando estaba en el cuarto grado, yo siempre estuve en clases bilingües. En el cuarto grado me movieron a una clase solo en inglés. And it was difficult for me, porque en la escuela yo hablaba inglés con mis maestras y con mis alumnos, etcétera, pero usualmente con la maestra. Y en casa no había el inglés, en la casa era español. Entonces, constantemente mi mente estaba traduciendo, etcétera, pero en casa no estaba practicando lo que estaba aprendiendo en la escuela. So, fast forward, I'm in 4th grade and they throw me into this all English class and I'm feeling out of place. The people around me don't look like me. And the teacher at that time would ask us to journal. So she asked us to journal. She prompted a beautiful prompt. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know I was very moved porque yo escribí páginas, pero las escribí en español. Y nos hacía randomly picked. Ese día me tocó a mí randomly picked. Cristal, go ahead and share what you wrote on your journal. I open my journal and I'm like, oh my God, it's in Spanish. She's going to get mad at me. So I open it, I stay calm. And I think my performance skills kicked in at that point, but I was translating what I wrote in Spanish, and then I was saying it in English. Y me trabé con una palabra, no sé cuál era, pero I was like, oh man, how do you say that in English? El chiste que it gave it away. And she took my paper, she took my journal, and she humiliated me in front of class. Humiliated me. She yelled at me and she said, you do not write Spanish on this journal. And I felt this tiny. I already felt that way, but she just reminded me of my place, or at that moment, you know. And then she took me outside and she yelled at me some more. And she said, you will never become anything if you continue to write in Spanish. And that crushed me. That crushed me so bad. And I remember, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was a little writer. That was my way of expressing myself. I used to write little poetry or little notes, things that inspired me. And all of a sudden that went out the window. That was like shut down. And it wasn't until long after that I realized, like, I'm going to write whatever the heck I want in whatever language I need to write, because I'm the writer. And I'm going to give myself permission to call myself a writer. If I wait for someone to call me a writer or tell me how I should write, I'm going to be stuck in this idea of, again, of someone validating my existence. And I'm not in that place anymore, fortunately. But unfortunately, a lot of our students still are. There's a sense of a need to be visible, right? And y todavía nuestra comunidad está así. And this is why I love doing, you know, just connecting back why I love teaching as a teaching artist, is because I get to bring an alternative way, and an alternative way to be creative, to write and say, for now, it doesn't have to be English. If it needs to be a combination of both, do it. This is for you, right? And I think it just stems back to that terrible experience with that teacher. But yeah, that really impacted my life. And I just recently kind of recognized the importance of having to release myself from those comments. And that's when I started writing my own plays. And I said, no, I need to write for myself and for my community, because no one else is writing, or there's very few writing for us, specifically la gente del campo.
I'm so moved by the story, because, you know, we know the Cristal right now, and we know of your talent, and there is so much to say about the process that it takes to overcome all these wounds that get so están tan grabadas en nuestro espíritu, porque no importa cuánto nos recordemos cada día lo valioso que somos, la herida está ahí. So it's something that never disappears. We just learn to cope with it y seguir adelante y ser resilientes. Pero, como decías, ¿cuántas cristales están ahí sufriendo en este momento también esa experiencia, o que han sufrido? En fin, ¿no? Y no todas las personas pueden sobrepasar ese momento, y es una gran tristeza. Ahora que mencionabas acerca de estas historias que son necesarias decirlas, me recuerda algo que está pasando ahorita, ¿no? Con todo esto de la pandemia, que cuando todo mundo se encerró en sus casas para protegerse, los campesinos no tenían esa opción, no era una opción para ellos, porque teníamos que asegurarnos que los que podíamos poner nuestra orden en el teléfono para que nos trajeran los vegetales, la fruta, y pudiéramos disfrutar y estar seguros. Pero pocas veces pensamos que había estas personas trabajando en el campo, en sus horarios regulares, sin protección y exponiéndose a los peligros de contagiarse, de tener que seguir trabajando aún contagiados, y tomó rato para poder poner atención a eso.
Exactamente.
Y es algo que es triste, y yo aplaudo mucho la labor que tú haces con el talento, con el poder que tienes, el poder de la palabra, de poder traer esa visibilidad a esta parte de la comunidad que generalmente está ignorada. O sea, no, nosotros sabemos de cuando vamos al supermercado y agarramos the produce or, the fruits, but we don't know anything beyond that or
Right.
before that. So gracias por el trabajo que haces. Ahora, cuéntame, como, como una mujer chicana, como una artista, ¿cuál ha sido tu experiencia en tu desarrollo como artista en el clima artístico de la actual América?
Es muy masculino. It's, I how do we even begin to unpack that? I think we have to even begin with what's being taught, right? Like, what is American theater? Like, defining that. I going to school. I remember spending a really bulk, like chunky time looking at Shakespeare and Chekhov, which, classics on their work, not to take away from what those literatures are. And I remember spending maybe a day of class, meaning like 2 hours, and just with Luis Valdez. And I was like, who is that man? Right? Or I want to know more about it. So I think we have to just break it apart and recognize that there's so many of us that make America, right? And for me, as a mujer, as I've been like trying to climb my way from a performer and not seeing myself on stage or reading scripts and saying, but I have to do a Southern accent. Like, it was always very off-putting. I felt, again, it goes back to, I don't belong here. There's not space for me. Or these plays aren't written for me, or aren't written for my type of people to enjoy. Because although the themes might be universal, the context or the relationship is different from una comunidad latina. Una familia latina es bastante diferente, las dinámicas y la manera que uno se expresa, etc. So as an actor, it's been challenging because there wasn't enough roles. There's still that push. There's still not enough representation for us. There's still not enough published authors to give us an insight of what America really looks like, right? I mean, I think it's still very male-driven, white-driven. I will say that word. And we need more color. And I think there's a lot of effort, and I applaud that. But there's still this small little window of women, and I know Diane Rodriguez, who we lost last year, was a champion of really putting and elevating the woman's voice, specifically, Chicanas and women of color. So we need more champions like that. And although hopefully in the future, I see myself flexing those muscles where I could really continue to nourish writers and producers that are mujeres. For the time being, it's una cosita a la vez. As a writer, same thing. Like, you have to you have to reclaim and show your skills to those people either hiring you or around you. There's always the issue of compensation because you're a woman and because you're a woman of color. And I've had to find myself in uncomfortable conversations, or conversations that I've had to be very savvy in how I express my concerns or my needs as an artist, to be able to produce X amount of work given the compensation. And it's not easy. And then of course there's this big shadow that us women get in the industry and the profession, because some of us are women, are mothers. Some of us have children, and not necessarily a specific example, but with other colegas that are in the similar situation as I am, an artist, a working artist with children, we find ourselves sometimes being devalued a little bit after you have children. So then there's like, oh, there's limitations because you're a mother now, or can you do that? Or because you're not going to be spending all this time because you have children, then we can't compensate you what we would pay fulanito, right? Yeah, it's a lot of that, and I feel it would probably take longer than we would need to unpack, but I'm here for the long run, and I think we're gonna have to continue to redefine what American theater is and who it's for. Right now, it doesn't feel quite yet like the comunidades that I write for are part of that American theater definition. It feels like you need to have an education to be sitting and watching a play sometimes, you know, and yeah, I think we need to keep growing on that definition, and we got to keep doing the work that you're doing, Rodrigo, right? With Teatro Visión, what I'm doing in the different organizations to continue to elevate those narratives and to make room for ourselves. We have to make room for ourselves within the scope of the current theater in America.
Thank you. And if folks get distracted by the train, I live right by the railroad, just here.
I thought you were afilando tu cuchillo.
It's so important what you're saying, Cristal, and I think that we need to make sure that we take advantage of every little opportunity that we have to voice exactly our feelings and our concerns, because a lot of time, you know, we don't want to be, we want to remain political correct, and we don't want to call things the way they are. But if we don't do it, who will?
Exactly.
You know, we continue to perpetuate all these injustices. And something that Elisa, my mentor and founding artistic director of Teatro Visión, she told me is, you know, to begin with, the theater was not created for people like us.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we are on a stage, it's an act of resistance.
Exactly.
And we need to keep pushing for that, because society needs to know that we belong there. We don't want to, you know, the validation. No, we need to be counted in this circle of humanity and the culture that has been created in humanity, because we're still not there. And when we go sort of like levels, when you're a person of color, you are behind several layers. If you are, you know, if you're a woman, you're layers behind. If you're a person of color who's a woman, you're layers behind. And on top of that, if you are LGBTQ or gender binary, you're at the bottom of that chain, and that cannot happen.
Right.
We need to make sure that we believe in our existence, and you know, continue to resist the erasure by the white man. So thank you very much. And of course, Diane, who's a fierce Chicana as well. You are already a champion, mujer. Yes, and so are you. Badu, muchas felicidades, Cristal, por tu bello trabajo y trayectoria en las artes. Arte para nuestra gente, sí se puede, mucho amor. Es un placer tenerte aquí. Para los amigos y amigas que nos están viendo ahorita en la Hora del Mitote, les recordamos que la Hora del Mitote se transmite cada viernes a las 7 de la tarde por nuestro canal de YouTube, nuestra página de Facebook, y también estamos en el canal 30 local de Comcast, gracias a la colaboración con nuestros amigos de Create TV. Y les invitamos a que nos manden sus comentarios, sus saludos, sus preguntas, lo que sean. Esto es la Hora del Mitote y estamos aquí para armar un gran mitote. So, continuando un poco acerca de todo esto que, like you said, it's difficult to unpack everything in this little space. But what do you think, what are the things that you think can happen, or small steps that can happen to start creating that equity, to start creating that awareness and in changing what has been the norm up until now?
I mean, I think you said it too, right? And I echo that sentiment. Show up. I get asked to go in panels sometimes, or art organizations that are primarily also white. So like funders, if you're in a ¿cómo se llama? Se me escapó la palabra. Like art councils, right? Art councils, por ejemplo. I'm so grateful that I've been serving the Santa Cruz Arts Council as a grant reviewer, but those are opportunities. Sometimes they come. I know Diane's a big fan of sending me like the California Arts Council is looking for panelists or people to join a webinar. Show up. That's one thing. Like I've had to tell myself, if I want representation or if I want resources as a Chicana woman or as people of color, show up to these conversations. Because when I do show up to the conversations, about 85, if not 90% or 95% are gente blanca, and they're taking up that space. Awesome. And I'm going to have to maybe make extra adjustments to make it to that meeting, but I have to show up because I have to be that voice. I have to be the one that says, really, well, somehow, Watsonville, or somehow, we're only funding like 10% women and the rest of the funding goes to males. What's happening there? And sometimes it's just that reminder of like that click. And you're like, oh, that's right. There is more women writers. So what should we do? Do we need to create programming? I have to. I mean, I'm signing myself up, not everyone else. But when those opportunities come, I have to take them, because if not me, then who? If I want to write the stories that speak about the campo, then I don't want someone else that hasn't been there to write those stories. I need to write my own, And remember Maestro Luis, when I heard him speak, I've heard him speak several times, but one specific time he said, we have to write our own story. That is our responsibility in this generation. And I took that to heart and I'm running with it, because si nosotros no, ¿quién? So if we don't do that labor also on the advocacy end to get equal pay, right? To get equal representation, or at least an adjustment, because right now the bars are so extreme in Hollywood and in our local theaters, right? Even in our surrounding area, it's still a lot of theaters are producing a lot of white male writers. So ¿dónde están las mujeres? Aunque sea blanca, pero que sean mujeres, So the idea is to continue to grow that ask, because as women writers, as women of color writers, we have so much to offer. It's a completely different lens that we're looking at the world. And our voices are just as vital. We are part of that historia. Just how you said, the campesinos are out in the field. They didn't stop. What is America? What makes America? They are part of that America. They're part of that narrative. So why aren't they being represented at all levels, right? Why do we become visible only when we're committing crime or when we're crossing the border illegally? Why is there a front line? Why are we blasted on the news then? But why aren't we shown as heroes? And of the work and the labor that we've been doing so long. And this is, you know, again, it goes back to why do I do the work that I do? Because that's the story of my parents, right? It's the story that continues to be overshadowed by unnecessary negative publicity. When, just like you said, in this last year, they're the ones that showed up for many reasons, because there isn't enough food at home, because there isn't a savings, because if I don't go to work, then I don't have a house for my kids. If I don't have a house for my kids, it just, the list goes on. And it goes back to, if I make my communities, and I'm surrounded by agriculture, if I make my communities visible, then they become part of the narrative of America. They are. And I think I lost track of what the question was, but that's how I'm feeling.
I think everything that you have said, it's very important and very powerful. I had an experience once. I was invited to be part of a review panel for a California organization. Mm. And here we are, a very diverse group, you know, people of color, white folks, men, women, LGBTQ. And we were reviewing these proposals. And there was one proposal of a dance group who had this amazing idea of doing this spectacle como en una montaña. Mm. So, you know, the idea seemed and sounded very poetic. And like you just, as an spectator, you go climb the little mountain, and at the top you will be experiencing this, you know, spectacle under the stars and on top of the hill. It sounded perfect. All of us, except one person, we said yes to the proposal. This person was someone who was on a wheelchair. Mm. And she said, I just have one question. How can someone who has mobility issues will be able to climb that mountain to enjoy that? Mm. And we were like, I don't know, we didn't ask. And in that moment, there was a dead silence. And for me, it was like, this is what privilege looks like. Mm-hmm. You just don't register.
Right, because it doesn't affect you directly. So, you know, like the mobility part, it was granted. You could walk up, right?
So because I walk, I assume that everybody can walk. Because I can climb that little hill, I assume that everybody can do it. And that's not the case. And it took that one voice for the rest of the panel, including me, to then reflect and say, if this voice wasn't here, we would have continued to ignore the needs of this community. So, you know, aplausos para lo que acabas de decir, porque es bien cierto, es importantísimo, es fundamental que estemos presentes en la mesa. Muchísimas gracias por estar presente y hacer todo en tu poder, porque tú lo decías, necesitamos champions, and you are a champion.
Oh, thank you.
You are already a champion. Y mira nomás, Jean-Pierre, bravo, jefa. Mireya Gómez Contreras, it's a privilege to work with Cristal. Cada vez que platicamos por minutos o por horas, aprendo y me inspiro. I look forward to what is coming next from you, compañera. Jean-Pierre, again, I had the opportunity of working with you, Cristal, y mi pregunta es, on top of everything you do, how do you still leading with heart and love? Right, I mean,
I know why he said that too.
Bravo, Cristal. Thank you for showing up. And
thank you, Diane, for watching.
There is so much, and I think that I also want to acknowledge, and let me fix my. Oh, here now we're in the selva, and I think we also need to acknowledge that, you know, we're a part of our community that this is also very important to acknowledge that we need to work together to make sure that, we strengthen those bridges, because, one person can reach over, but how long are you going to be able to hold onto the other end for how long if you don't have some support? And I think this is really important for everyone, para echarnos la mano con lo que podamos, con lo poquito que hacemos y de diferentes maneras, Y quiero ahora cambiar precisamente, bueno, no cambiar completamente, pero along the same lines, because of the work that you do, because of these bridges that you're building, because of the camino que estás abriendo. Hay un trabajo muy bello que tú has estado haciendo por ya un tiempo, que es palabra.
Sí.
Háblanos de palabra. ¿Qué es palabra? Es este beautiful project that you have been leading for years.
Well, Palabra was born in a artist circle that we were holding at El Teatro Campesino, and I believe it was 2013. And it was a conversation between artistas of like, what do we want to do? What should we create? And there was several comentarios or ideas, and one of them was Viva la Causa. So the Viva la Causa, if anyone watched it, anyone seeing this programming watched it, the part one was influenced by that. We're like, we should write a play together, and it should have like essential characters that the teatro has had and change it up, etc. So Viva la Causa came out of that. But then another big ask in the room was a space for artists to do their own work. And I was like, this is perfect, right? So I remember hearing that a lot in the space, and it was like, who wants to lead it? And I'm like, me. I don't know what I was getting myself into. I just was like, that's such a great idea. I have this deep appreciation for holding space for community, for familia, for artistas, for creators, for amistades, and those that know me, whenever possible, COVID has been different, but whenever possible, I try to bring friends together for the same reason. We have to connect. We have to check in, because if we don't, then who does? Like, we are each other's reflections. So this idea of Palabra was exactly that, a hub to bring artists together to create their own work and then throw it on stage. And when we did it for the first time in 2014, my co-producer, Alfredo Avila, who's also my husband, we're like, what are we going to do? We're like, we don't know. We're going to make it happen, though, because the artists of the teatro, the first round was really El Teatro Campesino artists that were like craving space to create. And Christy Sandoval and Kinan Valdez at that time were just like, go for it, do it, backing us up. And we got really excited. So the teatro was empty. And that's so exciting for any artista, because the possibilities are millions then. It's like, what I could bring a box and it becomes, 100 things. So that's exactly what it was. We brought, I believe the first round was like 12 artists from El Teatro Campesino. And they're like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it was an idea that came into a reality, or it was a song that was looking for a home, or it was a monologue that was hungry for an audience, or it was a scene that needed actors. And we just we added all the missing flavors. Nos conocimos poquito más. So that muscle of conocimiento en comunidad entre creadores artísticos fue mágico, fue explosivo. And we're like, we got to do this again. We have to keep doing it again. And every palabra has been different, because the intentions to bring community together, bring artists together, and then fill the teatro with community is at its core. But we never know qué vamos a hacer de cocinar, porque the submissions come in and the sabores are diferentes, and people come in with their own little jazz, a different tone. And then it's until we figure out what the lineup is that we're like, oh, we know what we're going to serve our audience. So it's been a pleasure to see so many artists submit work, and then locally too. So in the beginning, it became Nucleus, the teatro artist. Then it grew a little bit larger, so it was like an open call for submission, and it keeps growing and growing. And then that recognition que tú estabas diciendo, there's artists in our area that we've never heard of, or there's artists in the closet that just haven't come up and said, I've been writing for the last 20 years. And then all of a sudden you're hearing those voices and seeing these ideas have music underscore because a compañero heard their monologue and they're like, I think a violin underneath that would be amazing. And then you're co-creating. So then this individual idea becomes a collective one. And I think that's where we remember that we are a community at large. So, como dice Rodrigo, it's building artista, that muscle, because we need it. Building that writers, because we need writers. Building those directors, because there's been opportunities to direct each other's works too. And then building the conocimiento of how much talent we have in the area. And if we keep building that muscle, then Rodrigo could call me and say, hey, do you know someone? And I'm like, yeah, I have these pool of actors that I could, and vice versa. We've done that before. But the word palabra is to hold, is to say, es reconocer que estamos en un círculo y que yo voy a decir algo y que me vas a escuchar. And that's the palabra behind it, right? And it's ancestral. Many of us use it in ceremony, el concepto de un círculo. Y al estar en un círculo, me miro a mí al verte a ti o al vernos a nosotros. So if palabra became this hub where I feel as an artist that I could express myself and I feel that love back, then I'm in this circle, this energetic, vibrant circle that is really hard to explain unless you're in it. But we grow. At the end of each showcase, it felt like this group becomes so much stronger and it's elevated because we have each other, right? And that's comunidad. That's the círculo of comunidad. And I think that's why we're so passionate about it. And I say we, Alfredo and myself, because he's been my co-pilot throughout these palabras that we've done, and they've cycled and been something different every single time. So shout outs to all the artists that have done palabra since 2014.
And it has been, I'm going to tell you, the first time that I went to a palabra event, I didn't know what I was expecting. I had no idea. And being there and being that variety of talent and passions and ways of expressing, each person, it was so inspiring.
Mm.
It was so inspiring. I remember sitting in the audience and seeing the number that Adrian did it was like a clown number of where he was following the light, and it was amazing. And there was this other monologue that it was very powerful, and and music, and it was just that breath of fresh air que necesitas para recordarte que hay un propósito del por qué estás ahí y que es tan importante. Y he visto otros iterations of palabra. El año pasado hace 2 años yo estaba fuera, pero I was able to see it online. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yes.
And you know what's crazy about that one? We were like, let's go wild, because the teatro had been moved into a círculo because of the show that had been there before, La Pastorela. And those were our parameters. So the seating had changed. And we're like, ooh, what should we do? And then if anyone knows Alfredo, he loves to push buttons and just try new things. So he's like, let's do it live. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? But what he meant was film it as it's happening. So we had a screen inside the teatro where you would see close-ups of an actor if like their back was given to one side of the room, you could still see the zoom in of that person's expression on the wall. And it was so awesome because we tried something, we live streamed it. We were working with Jay Vera, Alfredo, and Dante as our technical support. And then we had 3 other people from Bachtoon 12, Alexis, Nate, and Daniel, who came in and worked those angles. And it was magic because all of a sudden we were able to take what was in-house outside. And we didn't know that was going to be the last of us coming together for a minute, because that happened it happened in March. And then the world shut down. A week or 2 later, boom. Porque ya habíamos escuchado del COVID. Recuerdo que estábamos ensayando, etcétera, y ya estaban diciendo que COVID, China, and I swear at that moment we're like, no nos va a llegar, or están exagerando el asunto. And then 2 months later, the world is turned upside down. But that was the last bit. That was the last one that we did. That was the last energy in that space for a minute. Yeah.
You're right, because I was we were on a trip,
Mm-hmm.
en un viaje, no en un viaje de los otros.
Thank you for clarifying.
I would have watched you too if I was on that trip. Pero se me hizo fascinante en principio por lo accesible que era de no puedo estar porque ya hice estos planes,
Mm-hmm.
pero I still can enjoy. Y fascinante por esta dimensión adicional que ofrecía,
Mm-hmm.
el poder conectar en el lugar, como tú lo mencionas, estas personas, el poder ver diferentes ángulos en vivo, pero también para las personas que estábamos remotas, el poder sentir que eras parte de ese espacio, que déjame decirte, yo creo que sin saberlo, ustedes fueron los pioneros de lo que después fue a fuerza.
We talked about that later. We're like, maybe we were thinking it was going to go that route, because then we all had to adapt, right? And everything's been live streamed. But so this is where we're at now, right? Like, how do we still hold space in this virtual world that we're living on currently?
Well, let me just read a couple more comments before we prepare to close. But Diana Torres, love you, hermana, proud of you. So much love tonight. I love it.
And I needed that too.
Diane, it sounds like a collective mole of blended flavors. Each year is a different mole. Que sabor. You're right on that, Diane.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, she saw it online and I was blown away. So amazing. Natalie González, mucho amor para Cristal. ¿Cómo no? ¿Cómo no? ¿Cómo no? Sí, el trabajo que haces es maravilloso. Y quiero recordarle a las personas que si quieren conocer más acerca del trabajo de Cristal, aquí tenemos su Instagram @Cristal_Avila_González. Ahí pueden estar conectados con Cristal. Y también si tienen más curiosidad de estar conectados con palabra y en general con el trabajo que hacen nuestros amigos del Teatro Campesino, su Instagram es el Teatro Campesino. Y aquí tenemos una pequeña sorpresita, una primicia. Esto es the lineup que estará presentándose virtualmente del 23 al 25 de julio. Y aquí están algunas de, las personas que participarán en este volumen de palabra, volumen solo. Que es que quiero leer lo que dice abajo y no me la sé.
Oh, dice Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, al Teatro Campesino.
Uh-huh.
Así que ya saben, van a encontrarse con una gran variedad de artistas con diferentes propuestas. No se la pueden perder. 24, 25, am I right?
Sí, 23 a 25.
Ok. ¿Cómo se puede conectar la gente? ¿Cómo pueden?
Vamos a poner otro flyer, entonces estén al tanto en el Instagram y en el Facebook del Teatro Campesino, donde vamos a darle la webinar, donde pueden apuntarse. Y va a ser estilo webinar solo porque algunas de nuestros artistas sí van a tener poquito, a little bit risky material. So para poder ser poquito más friendly con nuestra audiencia, que sea selectiva, que quieren verlo. A veces cuando lo hacemos en Facebook Live, puede salir y cualquier persona puede verlo.
Genial, genial, me encanta, me encanta. Y les prometemos que en cuanto nosotros tengamos la información, también la publicaremos en nuestra página de Facebook. We will give you the details once we have them, so more and more people can support this beautiful project, and more people come together in this comunidad que han creado Cristal y Alfredo, y que ha sido realmente una labor de amor, porque se dice fácil, pero I'm sure there is a lot of work behind it, and we just get to enjoy. Pero there is a lot behind that we don't see, and that we are thankful for the time, effort, and talent that you two bring to make it happen. So thank you very much. Para cerrar, últimas palabras. Bueno, no últimas, todavía tenemos 6 minutos. Pero para las personas que están interesadas ahorita ya es tarde para ser parte de Palabra, pero yo creo que algo importante que resuena en este concepto de Palabra es crear la oportunidad para que más artistas puedan ser parte de esta comunidad. No solamente de mostrar el trabajo, pero también de ser parte de una comunidad más extensa. ¿Qué recomendaciones les darías a aquellas personas que todavía no saben a dónde recurrir o cómo dar a conocer su trabajo?
Estoy pensando cuando yo comencé, y era, no, más bien comencé, cuando empecé a escribir, escribí y escribí y escribí y escribí, sigo escribiendo. No necesariamente con la idea de dónde va a estar producida, pero por qué. I think the why is even more important first before we get to where I'm going to perform it. So if you have a story that you've been thinking about, or a poem or a song, write it for yourself, write it for the audience that you intend. And from my very short experience, because I know there's a lot of other artists that have been doing this work for longer, the opportunity will come and you have to be ready for it. But if you're not ready, if that story or that monologue or that song or that scene hasn't been written, it becomes a whole different other game. So be prepared, be ready for that opportunity, because if you're looking, that opportunity is going to come. Y es lo peor que te puede pasar cuando estás, yo quiero que me publiquen, yo quiero escribir esta canción, yo quiero cantar, y luego llega la oportunidad y no estás preparada por X razón, right? Entonces, realmente enfocarnos en escribirlo, o tú mismo record it, lo que sea necesario para ti mismo, y esas oportunidades van a llegar. O sea, como persona, en el trabajo que yo hago, el Teatro Campesino es un hogar para mí. Lo ha hecho desde el 2010. Has continued to produce my work, made me grow as an artist in so many ways. Bachton 12, same thing. And Teatro Visión has also been a home. Brava Theater also has been a home. So there's opportunities. And hopefully we all take advantage of them. I think it comes back to the same thing that we were talking about it earlier. When the ask comes up, show up, because opportunities do come. Auditions do come up. Submission deadlines do come up. If we don't submit to them, then that's on us as artists. And I say that to myself too, because I told myself this year, tengo que terminar una obra, tengo que publicar un libro que llevo años como de poesía, narración, etcétera, y tengo que submit. I just have to submit to festivals, to writing competitions, to anything. I just got to do it. And that's what I've been doing. But those deadlines are real. So stay on top of that. El Teatro Campesino Palabra is one home, and I'm sure there's others. Right now, actually, currently, I don't know the exact name, but it's called Nosotros Monologue Slam. Has, and I could send it to you right after this, Rodrigo, they extended their deadline until June 6th to submit original monologues. And they're looking specifically gente de color. So write your monologues, but if your monologue's already written, submit it. This is the time to submit it because they want to hear our voice. Ocupan estas voces, estos nuevos escritores, or they want material to inspire new TV shows or a cartoon or a new play. Then we gotta show what we got. We gotta show our skills. We gotta come to the table prepared. So that's one specific one that I remember right now. Nosotros Monologue Slam. And it's June 6th is the deadline.
Ya en 2 días.
En 2 días, es que pónganse a trabajar.
Cristal, ya para cerrar, tenemos un saludo de Vanessa González.
Mi hermana.
Hi, sister. Diane Vega, what flavor are you adding to la palabra mole, Rodrigo?
Puro de
muy picoso, Diane, muy picoso.
It's beautiful. I'm actually very excited to have Rodrigo as one of the featured artists at Palabra. When I got your submission, to say the least, I was extremely moved.
Thank you, thank you. That was actually a collaboration with Russell. He called me last year and he said, hey, we need to do something. And I said, what can we do? And he says, I don't know. And I said, what if we, I've been playing with this idea of little historias. Y tú le pones música, me dice, órale. And that's what we did. I wrote the story. I sent it to him. He put the music, sent it to me. And it was there. A lot of things happened in between that we didn't bring it to life, but it was there. And I'm glad that it made the cut because God knows that it took a lot. But thank you on my behalf and all the people that you are offering the space to show their work. It is so important, and for the other people to enjoy the work of these other folks. Thank you. Fernando, un gran amigo. Hola, Cristal, siempre nos ve y
gracias.
Le damos un gran abrazo. Cristal, con esto cerramos la hora del mitote que, como viste, se fue de volada.
I was like, what am I going to say for a whole hour? Yeah, thank you, El Teatro Campesino, for letting Palabra be part of the programming. It makes it so exciting to be able to house it in such a historical place. So many artists come because El Teatro Campesino banner is backing up this artist showcase. So thank you for them.
Thank you to our brothers and sisters in our familia, our teatro familia at El Teatro Campesino. We're always very thankful for their legacy and the continuous work that they do to support artists. So thank you. And gracias a ti, Cristal, gracias por tu tiempo, gracias a todo el talento que traes, pero muy en especial a la pasión con la que realizas el trabajo tan importante que haces. Muchísimas gracias. Y bueno, hay un dicho que dice, arrieros somos y en el camino andamos. And it's an honor to be walking this world with gente como tú. Muchísimas gracias.
Igualmente, Rodrigo.
Y a nuestra familia que nos está viendo, thank you very much for joining us tonight a la Hora del Mitote. Nos vemos el próximo viernes con más invitados e invitadas especiales. Recuerden, estamos aquí a las 7 en la página de Facebook. nuestro canal de YouTube y en el canal 30 de Comcast con nuestros amigos de CreateTV. Muchas gracias a Cristal González Avila, a toda la familia de teatro y que tengan muy bonito fin de semana. Hasta luego.
Adiós.